dairy farming. Becca Brown has been farming for just over 2 months. And at the start of this year, she was still serving on a warship and wistfully wondering whether there was any prospect of doing something with cattle at some stage in the future. For me, it's a personal point of satisfaction that Rural Link was able to help her secure her current role. But what we'll do now is by way of an interview, is get her story of how she went from warship to dairy farmer in a few short weeks. So, Becca, are you you're hiding somewhere in there? If you put your
Yeah, I'm here.
video on, there you are. Oh, you're not in amongst the dairy itself that you threatened to be in. How
no, yeah, I broke out.
Brilliant. Okay, so well, thanks very much for coming along. And only a few short weeks into the role, so really at the other end of the experience thing. So I think what we said we'd start with, if you could explain where you are and about the farm, and tell us a bit about what you do to get people in the feel for who you are.
Well, I'm the general manager of Dairy Farm, which is a dairy farm up in Port William, which is in Dumfries and Galloway, right on the coast. So I've got a great view of the sea every day, so I don't get to miss that. And what they do here is they're a spring block calving unit. They've got 1,000 dairy cows with 800 cows, which will be following on in the next couple of years. At the moment, we're in the drying off season, so we're starting to dry the cows off, ready for a rest before they start calving in February. And then we go through calving until approximately the end of March, and then on to breeding again at the end of that, starting in May round to about July, and then into what I'm assured is the quiet time, because at the moment there seems to be no time in the day to get anything else done. But it's pretty good up here. It's a 1,000 acre farm, so it's a lot to get your head around. There's a lot going on outside of the cows. Lots of organisation required to make sure the water and the electric fencing is kept up to date and that maintenance schedules are adhered to. And the big thing of people management. There's only a small team here of about 10 people, so it's more trying to do everything with few people, which I'm sure lots of military people will understand, lean manning, and trying to get all the jobs done with very little resource.
Sounds very, very familiar. But of course, that's all about to change because the armed forces are about to have a huge cash injection, so we're told.
Oh, yeah.
But Rupert's reassured us that's going to happen with the Scottish farming economy as well. So we're all going to be rich. Flippancy aside, so casting your mind back to the start of the year, what steps have you taken to move towards resettlement? Let's put it that way.
So just over a year ago, I did the high ground course with Anna Baker-Creswell, which was brilliant in terms of giving me a good overview of all of the rural sector, and going through everything from being a ranger to working on a dairy farm, to small holding, to working outside on a golf course and doing greenkeeping. And from that, I knew that I wanted to work with cows, basically. I spent every morning that I was on that course milking the cows at the local college that we did the course on. But from there, I went back to sea. I was on a fishery protection boat, so doing 4 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and then initially found it quite difficult to get into the swing of networking and trying to follow up on a career in agriculture. So in January, I'd basically given up on getting into agriculture at all and decided that operations management would be the way to go. I was looking at Amazon as the easy route in from the military, and particularly when COVID hit, it was a secure job to move into while still getting out of the Navy as I planned. And it wasn't until May when I did exactly this, an insight day with Fiona, and it really re-sparked my interest in getting back into agriculture, and made me realise that actually that is definitely what I wanted to do. And I didn't want to work in a warehouse. I didn't want to be inside all day. I wanted to be outside and stick to my dream of working with cows. which is what I told everyone when they asked what I was going to do when I left the Navy. I then started following a bit more of a route of maybe going back to university and doing a diploma in agriculture. But again, following on from the Insight Day, and it's less advertised on things like LinkedIn. But there are people out there who are looking for veterans and looking for ex-military people. And Fiona was brilliant at bringing all of them together. And it started to open up a network for me. I'd left the ship by that point, so I had a lot more time to follow up on all the contacts. And I started following up, and I applied to a couple of jobs through one of the recruitment consultants who Fiona knows. And although unsuccessful, it pushed me to focus on that route again. And then it was purely by luck that Fiona got a call from an HR lady in Scotland who knew of a farmer who was looking for someone with management skills, because he got lots of people with farming experience, but hadn't got anyone who'd got management experience. And he was ideally looking for the full package, but it was talked around into the idea that maybe he could teach the farming experience, but the management would help me along. So I came up for a week's trial in August, and it was at no cost to the farmer at all. So Rory was really kind in giving me his time for the full week, and now that I'm here, I realise how much he doesn't have that time really to dedicate, but he really took time out of his day to take me around and show me the farm and see what we could do. And I claimed all the accommodation back and all of the travel back through the Navy and through resettlement, and used it as resettlement time. And then at the end of that, I got offered the job here. And it was purely through hard work, showing that the military skills that we all get through basic training, whether you're an officer, whether you're a junior 8 or the various Army and RAF equivalents, we all have the same level of work ethic. We can all do the attention to detail. We can all work long hours and really push yourself through what you might think is quite difficult, like at difficult times. And you've got a lot to do and not much time to do it in. And you can push through that, and you can still be enthusiastic and still be cheerful, and keep a good face on it. And I think it's that, with the reliability and enthusiasm being a key one, that sort of swung it for me after my week's trial, and made Rory think that maybe it's worth giving it a go. So here I am now.
So just to just dwell on that just slightly. So you went and did that work attachment, as we know, but what did you do to prepare for that, to make sure that you did give the best possible impression, and conversely, not being so sure that you would necessarily get a job out of it, but how did you make sure that you would get the best learning experience out of it, if that's all it became?
So I did a lot of research into the farm, and I'm quite lucky that Rory's got quite a profile on social media, so I could learn quite a lot from doing research about the farm itself. And then I sort of requested a lot about what their farming practices were and what they focused on and what kind of herd he had, and what kind of calving route. And then I did a massive amount of reading, basically, and read up on absolutely everything I could to do with spring block calving. He runs a New Zealand dairy system here. So I went onto the Dairy New Zealand website, which is, if anyone wants to know about dairy farming, it's the sort of font of all knowledge in the world of dairy farming. So I spent a lot of time looking at that, looking at how rotary parlours work. He's got 2 rotary parlours here. And combined with that, and then when I got here, I realised that the people-based skills, the systems knowledge you get, although I was a warfare officer, and we all have to learn the engine systems on a ship. So I used that knowledge to apply to the 2 parlours. And I think that kind of impressed from a perspective of he had not seen that level of systems knowledge in a new person. Bringing in the people management side and talking to him about his staff and any staffing issues that he had, which were all very relatable to what I'd seen in the Navy, with the exception of drug use. That was a new one for me. But all of that, it has a massive overlap between farming and the military, and the community in farming is really similar to what you find in the military. It's very much a way of life, particularly where I am. It's very remote here, and the core employment in the area is farming. Vastly, it's dairy farming up here, but can be sheep or cattle. And the community feel of that is very similar to when you live on a base or something like that. So it sort of at times feels a bit like home from home. They don't know a lot about the military, but I seem to have fitted in pretty well with the same mentality and the same ethos that they have in agriculture.
So, so as you look back, what's your top tip for service leakers like you who don't have very much experience, but they have got that certainty that you came across, that they know what they want to do, but they haven't got the experience? What's your advice for people following a similar route?
I'd say persevere, believe in yourself. There's always a route in, although it might not seem obvious at the time. Narrow your section down, because agriculture is a huge industry, which I didn't appreciate until I started researching it more. If you want a job that's an indoor job but in the agricultural industry, there are huge amounts of those. If you want to work with tractors, if you want to work with animals, there's so many different routes that you can go into in agriculture, that you really have to, I think, focus your search, and then do the research into that, prove that you are keen and enthusiastic to do it. And then, much like Willie said, approach farmers, approach people. When I was still down in Portsmouth, I went to a couple of dairy farms locally. I just approached them to see if I could go and get some experience with them before I came up to Scotland, just so I had a basic idea of dairy farming, having never been on a dairy farm before in my life. So it just it gives you that knowledge, which, although they don't expect it, when you do have an understanding of it, it makes them realize that you are keen, you are willing to put your all into it. And then I think the biggest thing is, when you get here, is not being afraid to do anything. The other day I had my hand down a drain which was about a foot deep in cow shit, and then the next day I'm in the office doing staff rotas. So it's about getting involved and being willing to do all of the different jobs, whether it's the lowest level job up to the highest level job.
Sounds like very similar values to walking around and inspecting bits and pieces of a ship. That's a really fascinating insight into a fantastic journey. Thank you very much. We've got to press on.